Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co-hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
Hospitality means freedom. It's the freedom of movement for capital, for people, for experiences, and I think the short-term rental space is what really encapsulates that all. A lot of the people that work in the industry, they enjoy traveling. They enjoy having good experiences and giving good experiences. And that's what I believe in as well.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
In hotels and vacation rentals, the top complaints or issues are noise, garbage, and parking. I may not be able to solve all of your parking and garbage problems, but I could definitely help with your noise problems. And that actually might just help your garbage and parking problems too. So NoiseAware is the only 100% privacy-safe noise monitoring solution that property managers and owners can use in order to ensure they avoid parties and other issues happening at their property. You won't get notified when a plate breaks, but if you have a little quiet get-together that kind of gets out of hand, like this, then NoiseAware will give you the peace of mind to ensure that you and your property, and of course, your profits, are protected. So use my code SlickTalk20 to get 20% off of all noise monitoring devices and focus on the other important things that help you run your business. Now, thank you for checking out Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Get back to the episode, and don't forget to check out NoiseAware while you're listening. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and every week is a special week because we always have amazing guests on the show. And today, I'm really excited to introduce the co-founder and CEO of Hostaway, which is a vacation rental industry platform for property managers. It's a leading PMS and channel manager for vacation rentals that was started from scratch. And the co-founder here today, Marcus Rader, is here to talk about the journey of building this and currently where we are today in the world of hospitality and short-term rentals. So Marcus Rader, my friend, thank you so much for being on Slick Talk today. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing well. The industry is recovering remarkably well and at a fast speed, especially in the US. And we're seeing now in our biggest markets that vaccines are rolling out and people starting to book trips again, and that's really beautiful to see.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's COVID. In the beginning, we always said sped up the innovation of the industry, and now it's speeding up, the recovery in a lot of ways. Now with vaccines rolling out and people getting more ready to travel, that revenge travel, which we'll probably talk a little bit more in detail in the episode. But I'm curious to know, where did everything start for you, Marcus? Because you guys have been at this industry for a while. So I want to hear your story and how you got into vacation rentals itself.
Yeah, good question. I was actually when I moved to Canada about 6 years ago, I was considering renting out my home on Airbnb, but across the Atlantic back in Europe, and I thought there should be an app or something to manage that remotely. And at that point, I didn't even know how Airbnb worked. I just knew the basic idea that you have a place where people enjoy to stay. And to be honest, the home that I had would be much nicer for travelers than for long-term dwellers because it's in a tourist destination. So people don't tend to like to even live there. And I was amazed to find out that there's no such thing at all. And I still think even today, there's no app that, makes sure everything works. But what I found instead was an amazing world of property managers. And what I thought Airbnb back then was just a hobby for people that was based on their advertising at the time. How single parents make ends meet with Airbnb, and people fulfill their dreams and so on. But when I started doing research on the market, I found out that's not the case at all. This is a very professional market. It's a very exciting market because you're able to put in VC capital and you're able to grow exponentially as a property manager. Also, there's a lot of financial models involved. But of course, for me, what really excited me was that the biggest obstacle to growth out of the property managers that I managed to interview and talk to, it was always technology. And I come from a long line of technology companies. Worked a lot in the ad space and even mobile apps or mobile games. But it was exciting to see that the problems they were facing were, well, back then I thought they were simple technological problems. They're actually extremely complex problems. But it was a very clear message that right now is the right time to go out and build that technology. Maybe not for all the property managers, but for some. And as we ventured down on that journey, we found out that no, we actually need to build technology for all the property managers. And that's what we did.
Well, now I'm curious. So you said you've been involved with tech startups and technology as a whole for a while. So what were some learnings from previous either other industries or ventures that you guys brought into the creation of Hostaway?
Very good question. First of all, I remember there was actually last week, one of the companies I used to work for raised 28 million. They're called Musician. They're the largest music educator on the planet.
Okay.
With over, well, a few years ago, they had 100 million users. I guess now it's way more.
Wow.
But when I started working there, they gave me this book and said, look, you just have to read it. If you don't read it, you can't really work here. It was called Lean Startup.
Okay.
And I read that, and suddenly everything popped into place for me. Everything made sense. Every time I made a bad decision, or I didn't get a promotion at work, or whenever I managed to sell something to a customer and they were really happy and paying a lot of money for that, everything just made sense. And what I've come to learn after that is that actually all entrepreneurs face exactly the same challenges. They all have the same problems. And actually most of those problems are fairly easy to work or easy to solve, as long as you're willing to admit that you have this problem, and as long as you have the necessary network, and in many cases capital, to solve it.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing to see how it doesn't really matter what you do, as long as you have a scalable business. It has to be something that can rapidly scale in order to apply principles of scaling and growth. That's maybe my biggest takeaway is I was able to look back at all the other companies that I worked at and realize that behind the daily work there were hardworking founders who had given everything for it, and they were all successful, but they had all so many failures in their past.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you make, and I'm gonna bring this up because all my audience and listeners know that I do a pre-chat with every guest, unless I've already known them for a while, or the repeat guests or whatever. But we do a pre-chat for the show, and you and I were actually talking about a fun game that we've all known and love from on our phones. But can you tell us the story of Game 53, as you like to call it? Just a story that you're kind of sharing with me behind what was created as Flappy Bird.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do new things, and when you set up a company, you always have this idea of what it's going to look like and what people are going to do and what it's going to do and so on. And that idea, that vision, it never really turns out the way you wanted it to, because some parts of that, some critical elements, turn out to be unnecessary or dysfunctional, and some things you didn't even imagine, you need to add them, which means you need to go into an area that's completely unknown and uncertain. And usually when you have to do that, you fail. and then you try again and you fail again, and you try a couple more times. And there's one sometimes when I speak to staff members who are feeling demotivated when why can't we get this one thing? It should be so simple. Mm-hmm. Why can't we get it going? I always tell them remember game 53. It was back in Finland. There was a couple of guys who decided to build mobile games. I unfortunately don't know them personally, but they decided to build a game, and it was a great game. It was a fantastic mobile game, but that's not what determines success in the mobile game space. There's really only two things you can do. One is to get a lot of players, and the other one is to get a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Having a good game is not some means to an end. It doesn't. I mean, yeah, having a terrible game probably won't help you, but having a good game doesn't really mean much. Yeah. But these guys, they built a game, and it didn't work. People didn't want to play it, and it didn't matter what they did for it. So they built another. And when they started getting up there to game 48, out of which the reviews said, why would anyone ever play this? They ran out of money, which is what usually happens when you fail too many times in a row. And eventually they managed to scrape together the budget for game 52. And of course, it failed. And then game 53, I don't know how they did it, but they managed to build game 53. And despite having 52 failures in the past, they managed to build the top grossing game of all time called Angry Birds.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of brings back to I want to bring it back to Hostaway, because for you guys, I guess for your founding story, whether it's Hostaway or even just previous versions of Hostaway, obviously you guys have probably been evolving as not only the industry, but the years have gone. So what does game 53 look like for your guys' journey in Hostaway as a whole?
Yeah, there's a lot of smaller things, but I can name the biggest ones. First of all, we never intended to build a PMS. We intended to build a channel manager.
Okay.
And that was I think it took us 2.5 years to realize that, no, we really need to build an all-in-one platform. Mm-hmm. And we really have to be the central point for absolutely everything, because otherwise we're going to be dependent on other systems that are beyond our control. And that's not something you want in a tech company. You don't want any additional risk, because tech is quite risky in itself. Another thing we had to pivot on is we started targeting smaller property managers. Nowadays, I don't even count the number of properties; I count the number of staff they have. But let's say people who have less than 5 staff members, or typically people who were just doing it themselves. Maybe they managed 5 units, maybe 10, maybe 20 by themselves. But we had to make it wasn't really a pivot. We're still a really good platform for those property managers. But when you have 200 employees, when you manage thousands of properties, your demands change.
Yeah.
And we realized that there are different systems out there, different technology, different ways, and different operational and organizational structures. We have to support both of them. And what we actually managed to build is a platform that you grow with. And that's very, very rare, especially in our industry. There are platforms that are good, platforms that are cheap, platforms that work in certain markets, in certain situations, but to have one that you can use with 5 properties or with 5,000, that's quite unique in this industry.
Yeah. And you guys started out as a channel manager compared to a property management software. So you kind of got a lot of the, I guess, bottlenecks kind of out of the way for a lot of property managers. As a property manager myself, the one thing I'm either worried about is my calendar syncing, or that my rates or everything else isn't going to the channels correctly. That's always kind of like the what if, right? That what if thought. And starting out that way, I think you guys bring something really unique. So can you tell us what that really looks like from a development side of the software? Was it actually beneficial for you guys to start that way, or was it actually a hindrance to create the PMS? I'm curious.
I think in hindsight, we would have had a way faster go-to-market without doing that. Or even if we had just many of our competitors, they started by only doing stuff with Airbnb and no other channels, or they partner with other channel managers. Technically, it's extremely complex because first of all, the OTAs, they are now focusing on the partners, because partners like us, we're the ones to bring them the most valuable stuff, which is the inventory that they sell.
Yeah.
But they weren't built as platforms to collect inventory. They were built as platforms to sell bookings. Mm-hmm. And technically, that just means that they're built for something else than what they're being used for at the moment. Also, they and we're official partners with all the big ones. But even then, they have different functionality in different parts of the world, and for different target groups, and for different property managers, it works in a different way depending on how things are. They also have a lot of manual overrides, not to mention the fact that the simple basic functionality you need, well, nothing's really basic. All is quite advanced.
We think it's basic sometimes, but then getting into it, it's not.
Yeah, well, it's not always documented correctly, and things change. They deprecate an API, they release a new version, and it's lacking one feature that your software needs. There's new APIs coming all the time, and you have to be on shortlist in order to get access to them. But if you are, that means that you're a beta tester, and sometimes you implement a feature that everyone loves, but then the OTA stops supporting it. So having a strong tech background is a requirement here, because you're not going to be building a software that does one thing and expect it to work the next day. No, you have to constantly update it to make sure it works. And when I say that it has to work, that's not only whether it actually does the job, it's also the demand of the market changes radically overnight. Just last year, we saw that suddenly cleaning and Wi-Fi are really, really important. Yeah. And that was never a problem before. But then that means you need to have an extremely knowledgeable and agile development team. If you don't build up that from scratch, it's going to be very hard to do anything that's complex in this industry.
That's a really good point. And I think for a lot of us, I'm not going to even say a lot, I'm going to say for everybody, last year was a game-changing year in all of our businesses. And I'm curious to know from the Hostaway standpoint, let's say April 2020 to now, we're actually in May 2021. So a year later, what have been those, I guess, big changes that maybe you guys didn't even see prior to COVID-19 that you guys have implemented?
Yeah, really, really good question. There's a couple of things that, first of all, what I did, because we have a diversified user base. It's global, but since we're a high-end product with a let's say fairly high price, we are in the high-end market. So it's basically Europe and Australia, New Zealand, North America, and so on. But we lost a big part of that, to be honest, and that wasn't great. And for me personally, I managed to take the opportunity to stop everything regarding strategy. And you don't need a 5-year plan when the world is ending. But what I did know was that many of our customers were in distress, and many of them also went bankrupt. I got on the phone with each one of them. I set together a task force to make sure that I just get to talk to each one of them and see how we can help. And I did that. I think I spoke to over many months. I spoke to almost 20% of our user base. And that was amazing for me, because especially when I saw that the world didn't end, it was really, really good to have the insights from directly from the end users.
Well, it's not it's not just data coming in; it's actual human verbal communication of not just seeing the data on the back end of what you guys see, but you're actually hearing it from the horse's mouth in a lot of ways, which is really
exactly
unique. Yeah.
Exactly. And it gave a lot of confidence, because what we most of all what people were saying, they were giving us praise. They were so happy with the service and with the product that was really good motivator in a time of distress.
Yeah.
But what it allowed us to do is really segment which part of the markets are going to pick up when, and what do those people need. So one of the things we did was we introduced, we had been planning it for many years, but it never really took off until it had to be done 24/7 support. And have a really good support team with enough resources in place to actually help anyone. Because when you're a property manager and your business is reliant on a piece of software, if you don't know how to do something, it doesn't matter if it's written in a user manual. You need someone to talk to, because property managers don't have problems in their daily lives. They have problems in stressful situations. And in those stressful situations, you don't want to introduce any additional stress, and that's when we're going to be there.
I like that. I like that a lot. So that's really interesting that you bring that up. And I'm kind of curious: is there anything? This is just something I want to know personally, and I'm pretty sure the audience does too. Now that I'm thinking about it, but out of that 20% of property managers and clients that you guys talk to during that time, what one, you don't have to say names or companies or anything, but what one situation I think maybe stuck out to you the most for the days to come that kind of always sat in the back of your head? Was there any particular one that was just like, yeah, when they said that, it really struck a chord?
There's one that I still remember, because it was quite a difficult day. It was a property manager in Rome. They had more than they had around 20, but they were very high-end units, and basically they were so high-end that they said they're 90% Americans. And that was in Rome, in the center of Italy, which at the time was the epicenter of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I asked him, well, no, I didn't even have to ask him, is there anything you can do? Because he admitted that this business is gone. Maybe 5 years from now, someone will set up something similar. There is nothing in the world that could save this. And that led me to realize that we don't have to fight every fight, especially the ones that we can't win. But instead we can fight the fights that we can win. So one of the great outtakes from that was that we were able to pretty much stop running in the hamster wheel and instead start focusing on what are the core aspects of our product that needs improvement. And say, well, it's quiet now. What do we want? This is what we want to build. And we brought it out we have been, again, developing our product faster than anyone in the space since last March. So we have one big product launch every month and about 3 smaller ones every month. But it's a bit hard to put in newsletters when so much stuff is happening.
Yeah, newsletters and the amount of virtual, webinars and happy hours and endless Zooms. I can only imagine. No, that's really cool. That's actually kind of, it really opens up your eyes in a lot of ways. And you actually kind of mentioned, so, okay, I'm going to actually rewind a little bit. So for your new products and everything coming out, one thing that I've been looking at as I'm not a developer tech person, but I'm a very big fan of implementing tech in the right ways in order to enhance the business, to focus on the guest experience, to then focus on a scalable business that's profitable, that you can either exit or sell or just have run and make a great revenue for your lifestyle or for whatever else. So with that, it goes into consolidation of tech. Now, for you guys at Hostaway, I want to know, what does consolidation of tech look like? And is that something you guys are looking at as an important thing to be focused on for your business? Or do you think specialization for one specific area of tech, whether it's PMS, channel management, or these other products that you're creating? I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because one thing I immediately found out when I didn't even know anything about the industry 6 years ago is that it's fragmented.
Mm-hmm.
I've done, actually, my background, I've done a lot of market research, and also on the product side I've been involved in product development related to market research. And no matter how many industries that I researched before, I had never seen one that's so fragmented, where you have people look, speak, they sound different. Their locations are different. Their business model is different. Their attitudes are different. And the way they operate their business and why they even have a business in the first place is different. I had never before seen an industry like that. And that's why we had to start narrowing down the focus. And we didn't want to limit ourselves geographically. But everyone says this is a fragmented market. And that's also true on the tech side. We have competitors that started in 2001, is the oldest one, I think. And there's a lot of legacy technology out there. There's that even has a large user base. Technology that does some parts of the business, but doesn't really do what the consumers want these days. They want a fast and easy process. They want access to all the information. Actually, they want answers to the questions before they ask them. That's what consumers want these days. And basically, they're all using some similar parts of the technology, but you can't really consolidate something that is being used for different, even if the technology is the same, if it's being used by different people for different reasons, for different purposes, and with different outcomes, it's going to be very hard to consolidate that. Mm-hmm. And but on the other hand, you can't have a bunch of companies that are just trying to do something similar, and nobody really knows the difference between them either, because not every one of those companies can be profitable. If there's enough of them, they're not all going to be profitable. There used to be 1,000 Facebooks around, and then Facebook became profitable, and the others disappeared. Now, we've seen a couple of waves of consolidation, and there's one underway right now, probably because a lot of companies are distressed or tired after a pretty hard year in the travel industry overall. But I think it's exciting. I love mergers and acquisitions, and especially what goes on behind the scenes of those things. I think it will definitely continue because of the fragmentation. There's not a lot of property managers out there who have never considered using any technology at all. In fact, most of them, if they've been started in the last 5 years, they probably use some technology. And sometimes they can't switch away for one reason or the other. And if you want to grow into that segment, the only way you can is by buying their current supplier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is fun. I'm curious to know, what are your predictions? Do you have any thoughts on who's going to consolidate or anything like that? What are your guys's what does that look like to you? Do you see any, like, if you could guess on any, unless you know, if you know, then you don't have to share, but I'm kind of curious because I think what you said is pretty true. There's a lot of different fragments of softwares and different types of managers that use these softwares with a lot of similarities, but then there's always that key one or two features that manager or that management company is like, hey, we absolutely need this no matter what. This is the backbone of our business. So I'm always finding that interesting. We with Airbnb's IPO, and then now it looks like Sonder is going to go in the same direction. I'm curious to see what that does, because there's been a lot of venture capital getting put into short-term rentals specifically. It's no longer just hotels and other hospitality businesses or travel businesses. So I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think.
Yeah, well, I don't think there will be a winner in the foreseeable future, simply because it's still so fragmented. And I think I realized that already 3 or 4 years ago when we set up our first office in Barcelona, and I went to visit there, and immediately I thought I should of course meet our clients in Barcelona. More importantly, I should meet the property managers in Barcelona that aren't our clients. So I did that, and I asked them, what technology are you using? And they mentioned some, I don't remember the name, but I had never heard of it, and I've never heard of it since. And I asked, what would it take for you to switch? And he started listing how much he hates that piece of software.
Oh, wow.
But it came down to one factor. And the factor was that his cleaners were not speaking English or Spanish. They were speaking Catalan. And he said, that's the one thing. If you can give me a cleaner app in Catalan, then it doesn't matter if you're just slightly better than whatever I have now. I'll switch immediately. And that's when I realized, no, this is not, we're not going to have a winner takes it all scenario in this industry for a very, very long time. And one thing also to consider, there's a large travel market in Asia that's completely, at least in the vacation rental space, is completely disconnected. For example, Airbnb doesn't allow short-term rentals for residential properties at all. And Latin America is now growing, but they're 5 years behind.
Yeah,
there is just so much to go on. There's so much opportunity right now. So consolidation isn't the only route. I mean, today, if you were to launch a social media network, that would be pretty hard, and you pretty much, you can only exit to Facebook or Twitter, or probably not even Google. You have two buyers, and that's it. But that's not the case here, and it's not going to be for the next 5 or 10 years. Maybe after that we'll see something. But if we look at the hotel space, there's a couple of big players, but it doesn't stop 1,000, 2,000 companies from being very successful and very profitable without being one of those big ones.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that brings up another question I have, and maybe even just a great talking point, because I come from the hotel world. I started out with an autograph collection with Marriott, as a lot of my audience knows and whatnot. But for not just consolidation on the tech side, but with this gap being bridged between hotels and vacation rentals, is that something you guys are even seeing on your Hostaway side? Are you seeing hoteliers start getting into the short term? Obviously, there's Homes and Villas by Marriott and a few other programs, but is this something you guys have been seeing with maybe even some users or current hotel companies?
Absolutely. It's been, even pre-pandemic, it was going on. The hotels wanted into this space, but especially now that in large parts of the world the hotels are empty, they have to get in at any means possible, and it's been interesting. Well, some of it is simply necessity. For example, you have some very skilled talent that are simply out of a job because the city that they live in, they could manage any hotel better than anyone else, but there's no hotels that need management because they're all closed. We have seen those people get hired by vacation rental companies instead. And there's quite a steep learning curve transitioning from that world into vacation rentals, and we are constantly training our customer success team on how to bridge that gap. I mean, just to name one example, it's the whole concept of supply and demand it's the opposite in the two worlds. In a hotel, let's say you have a small city with 200 hotels. That's what you have. It doesn't take much to figure out that it's fully booked on Super Bowl weekend. Because the 200 hotels are fully booked. But when it comes to short-term rentals, on the other hand, you can have a spike in supply. And a high fully booked hotel weekend might turn out to give a lower nightly rate for short-term rentals. And that's a mindset that you're living with a constant fluctuation in supply. It's a bit like on Amazon, when you're selling a great product, everyone's buying it until suddenly there's 100 other people selling the exact same product, and it's slightly cheaper than you, or a lot cheaper than you. You can't control that supply side on the vacation rental side.
No, that's true. And it brings up another thing. When I first got into vacation rentals, I was still a hotel manager, and we did daily, if not, like I did yield management for our revenue, but then also we had weekly meetings and we had monthly overviews, and then we had this and we had that. And we did a lot of revenue management tactics and strategies being put in place at the front desk and all this other stuff. And I remember one of the first people and like clients I started talking to was like, "Oh, how are you guys doing your rates? How are you doing your revenue management?" Like, "Oh, it's X amount of dollars a night. That's it." Like, we have obviously a little bit of an influx during the busy season, but it was nobody was doing revenue management the way that there are with, now Beyond Pricing and Wheelhouse and all these other products that are doing dynamic pricing. They're keeping up with that supply and demand. They're seeing what's being booked and what's not being booked and how people are booking and what the booking window looks like now. And that was just something that wasn't around, or wasn't at least talked about or used, I would say 4 or 5 years ago. So now, where if you don't have dynamic pricing, you're missing out. You're leaving way more money on the table than ever before. So I think you make a really good point.
Yeah, and there's the other example that's really obvious is the guest experience.
Oh yeah,
because with a hotel, people know where it is. If you go to the Marriott at an airport, you know that it's at the airport, and you just need to look at the signs. There's the Marriott. But what really differentiates vacation rentals is that the guests, you are actually selling the experience mostly before the guest arrives.
Yeah.
Because what determines the success of a hotel is the occupancy rate and the nightly rates.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the revenue at the end of the year, and that's where you know whether you were successful or not. In vacation rentals, you're successful if you have good reviews.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And those reviews comes from expectations versus reality. And what you need to do as a property manager is completely the opposite of a hotel. In a hotel, you need to have high quality beds. You need to be in a good location. But with vacation rentals, what you need to do is adjust the expectations of the guests before they arrive. And that starts with things like marketing, photos you take, or the reviews from other users, or like, sure, there's some elements are overlapping. Like, you need a location that people want to go to.
Yeah.
But even then, we have one customer who's out in the desert, renting out beautiful Airstream RVs.
Yeah,
that are just sitting there. He's got an RV park,
Is
but
that
he can charge up to $1,000 a night on that, out in the middle of nowhere.
Is that in Joshua
And that's
Tree?
something that a hotel, someone who's lived in the hotel world, you wouldn't really think about that. It would seem like someone's crazy concept. But in the vacation rentals, you don't need a concept at all. You can just start doing it.
100%.
And it might work. And if it works, you can expand it. You can have 20 RVs or 50.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you brought that up. Is you're really creating the destination experience way beforehand, and that, like, for us, one of our properties has horrible Wi-Fi. Like, if you're a remote worker, you don't want to book here. You don't want to stay. This is not a place. And we put that in our listing, and people actually, we get 5-star reviews, and they always mention, "I'm glad that they told me the Wi-Fi isn't fast. It's not something I want to do Zoom calls on, because it was a great weekend for me to unplug and get away." Like, something like that. And I think you really are tailoring into where, I think from my experience on the hotel side, you're saying, hey, whoever wants the best room at the best rate, you got it. Like, come stay here at this property. Versus a vacation rental, you're really tailoring to a certain person or a type of person. So, unplug, getaway type, retreat, versus this is a great staycation / workcation property where you have a stand-up desk. We have great internet speed. Here's a screenshot of our fast Starlink Elon Musk Wi-Fi that we have here at the property that we installed just for you type deal. There's completely two different tailored experiences and guest, I guess, quote unquote, avatars, as people have been saying lately. And
one of the amazing parts there is that what I see some property managers are able to do successfully, that's quite rare, but it's possible. But it would be impossible for hotels.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a city where a single room for a 3-star hotel costs $100. There's just no way you can rent out your rooms at $250. It doesn't matter how fancy your swimming pool is. There's just no way you can do it. But what you can see in vacation rentals is that the property manager gets to choose the guest on two different levels. At a hotel, people walk in and they get a room.
Yeah, 100%.
But with a vacation rental, you can, first of all, market it to a certain audience. And a part of that is the price.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is people who want to pay 250 for 100 for one specific reason, whatever that reason happens to be. But if you can find it out and you can attract those guests, you can actually do that. You can charge 2.5 times what your neighbor is charging if you just choose the right guests in the marketing and also in the vetting. Because if you get the wrong guests staying there, they're going to say, well, you know what? This was 2.5 times the price, and it was just the same stuff as next door.
Yeah, definitely. No, you make a really good point. I'm curious to know, because you've been talking about the development side for Hostaway, and I don't want to make this about the industry and all these predictions that we've been talking about, which is really fun, and I love geeking out in this way, but I really want to be able to talk about Hostaway and what you guys are really developing, and actually maybe even how this, predictions or thoughts of the future of short-term rentals and vacation rentals, how this is implementing you guys, the ideas or the sparks that are creating these new products and what you guys are doing. So is there anything in particular right now for Hostaway itself that you guys are just going all in on with the product creation side to service the fragmentation in, I guess, the industry of the property managers?
There's certainly a lot of developments. I don't think I can highlight any one in particular, but one example of the hotel and the vacation rental industries merging is that we're seeing demand for property managers to take over entire complexes. So one of the things we have built and launched since the start of the pandemic is the support for multi-units. Another trend that I don't see going away anytime soon is getting direct bookings.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's something that has completely changed. I don't think the OTAs in any way have lost the trust. I think they have their own market.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, what we're seeing right now, so I always say we're in two industries. We're not in the software industry, but we're in the travel and in the real estate industry. Mm-hmm. And so I monitor the real estate industry very closely. And what's happening right now is that there's globally a huge amount of capital being put in. And what the end outcome of it is, unfortunately, the rich are getting richer and they're going to keep getting richer. But what it means specifically for the hospitality industry is that there will be more people who own more of these vacation rentals, and there will be fewer people overall that can afford to buy one. And as an outcome of that, people will want to rent. So the demand for vacation rental properties for rent will also increase because real estate prices are skyrocketing, especially vacation destinations right now. Mm-hmm. And that's not because of work from home. That's just a shift. It's not even a shift. It's just an acceleration in what would have happened anyways, except now it happened in 1 year instead of 5 years.
Yep. Yeah.
And as an outcome of that, people will want to make sure that they know who they're dealing with, because they may not be able to go to their dream location because it's fully booked. And they may instead want to go with their family or with their friends to someplace nearby, someplace they know. And they might reach out through their own network, maybe even go in on Facebook and find out their cousin happens to be a property manager near the lakes, 2-hour drive away, and then book that way.
Yeah.
That's just that's one example that there's so much right now, so many reasons to book directly. Yeah. Not even to mention things like cancellation policies, which are a lot easier to negotiate directly with the supplier rather than through a third-party platform. But that being said, the OTAs are going to do great as well. I mean, the Airbnb IPO was really a boost for the entire industry. And as Airbnb themselves are saying, they need 1,000 more hosts right now.
Yeah.
And that's what our numbers are showing as well.
Well, it's good. It's good. The numbers are lining up in all directions. I'm curious, do you think the trend of drive-to destinations is going to go away even when international opens up with, the rollout of vaccines and everything. My prediction, I've been saying, obviously it's not going to be as high as it is because one of the only options that, like, let's say people in the US can do right now, other than a few places like, Mexico, and I can't remember what else just opened. Something else just opened up, but other than like Mexico, a lot of people don't have that option to go to Europe or to go to Scotland or to go or wherever. So my thought is that it will diminish a little bit when international travels opens, but I still think it's going to be a hot market. Something that people have now experienced and tasted and felt, and it's like, okay, this is a good experience. I like traveling, within a 5-hour radius of my house. It's not as stressful. I can do it more often. I'm seeing my backyard in a different way type deal.
Yes. I can tell you why I think that is drive to destinations are here to stay. The travel industry as a whole, vacation rentals is a very small part of the travel industry. But the travel industry as a whole, it has shifted, it has changed forever. That's because it used to be driven by business travel. And for companies that had to quit business travel for a year now, they have either found themselves bankrupt or they have found out that they can conduct business without travel and save a lot of money. Now, what it means for the industry as a whole is that suddenly, even though the problem might be gone once we have open up travel, you're not going to have big companies putting back these budgets just to go travel to meet someone to close a deal when you have the numbers right in your spreadsheet. They're telling you can close a deal without meeting these people. Now, there are people who will want to travel, but that travel they want to travel with their family. They want to travel with their friends, or they want to travel even alone, but they don't want to travel for business. And even if they do, they're not going to get the budgets to do that. So you will see probably just like drive to destinations will continue being strong. What I think will be a very strong industry is conventions and meetings.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. I've been looking at the side of like, okay, if you have a team that's national, let's say they're all in the US or they're all in Canada or wherever, and you have one on the east side, one on the west side, or not one, but you have a group on the east side, a group on the west side, no office, everyone's working remote, but then you have the ability, like you said, conventions or other things where you can actually, hey, east side team and west side team meet up at a hotel or a vacation rental that we booked for you. It's cheaper. It's not going to be a huge expense, but it just won't happen as often. Like you said, you don't need to go close that deal every weekend or every Monday to go fly out to a place and shake hands and sign contracts. You can actually do it less often, but every now and then I think that human interaction for employees or employers to their employees is going to be something that maybe they'll start doing it like a group travel, or I don't even know how to word it, what it would be, but some kind of business travel, but more for the employee's sake, not just the employee to client.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually did our first retreat already in 2018. In hindsight, we should have done it again in 2019, but we were quite busy in 2019. But we brought everyone. We have people around the world employed, and we brought everyone to Barcelona for a week. It was awesome. It was a great experience and something that I've done in other tech startups as well. But now, especially that we're all remote, whether we want to or not, we are going to meet up. But I think I'm not at least going to travel to meet individual clients. Instead, I see myself going to a convention. And if I need to meet an important client, I'll do it online, just like I have so far. Yeah. Because it's much more efficient.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Marcus, man, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you and get to know more about Hostaway and the journey and, of course, your thoughts on the industry. But I always love to ask my guests on the show, so the audience has easy access to everything we've been talking about. What's the best place for people to go to find more about you or about Hostaway and all that good stuff? Where can they go in the show notes directly to find you guys?
Great question. On the hostaway.com website, we have a blog. We produce really a lot of good content, and And that would be the number one place. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also send me an email at marcus@hostaway.com. I tend to pick up on it. So if anyone wants to reach out, maybe you're looking for a new career, let me know.
Yeah.
I'm always open to talk.
Awesome. Well, Marcus, again, it's been such a huge pleasure. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and the company and figuring out, I guess, your thoughts on all these topics. And it's been really fun to kind of geek out a little bit more than most. So I appreciate you taking the time to be on Slick Talk. And Slick Talkers, everyone who's listening, you can see every link in the show notes, as always. That will never change. So easy access in the show notes. Go ahead, check it out, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
As I've been growing my business and finding new ways to add to my property portfolio, I have to think about how I can anticipate the homeowner's needs, just like I do for my guests. One of the things owners always ask is, how is my property going to be protected? What happens if something gets damaged or worse? These are valid questions and concerns, and I have an opportunity to address these concerns before they even get mentioned, all thanks to having Safely as part of my toolkit. I can ensure all stakeholders are covered during a guest stay and use this information as a way to grow my business by ensuring my property owners know they can trust that I have them covered. If you're a professional property manager, then you need to get Safely in your tool belt so you can focus on operating and growing your business. Thanks for listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, back to an episode. What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.